On Thursday, October 9th, 2025, Pope Leo XIV released his first apostolic exhortation, Dilexi. It teaches that concern for the poor is essential on the pathway to holiness. The Archdiocese of San Francisco wasted no time in posting a direct link to the document on the Archdiocesan website. Furthermore, the Archdiocese has announced that an all-day workshop will be offered at the Archdiocesan Cathedral Conference Center on the new exhortation and urged participation from all pastoral leaders and catechists. Just kidding. The Pope did release the new document, but as of this recording, there has not been a single mention of it on the Archdiocesan website. This lack of response confirms what I have been saying for a long time about the relationship between Archbishop Salvatore Corleone and the Vatican.
Dies irae, dies illa, solvens secum in pabila, tested avit cum sibila. Quantus tremores futurus, quando iudex est funturus, Conta stricte discussurus.
I have long referred to the Archdiocese of San Francisco as Avignon by the Bay, alluding to the time in Catholic Church history when more than one pope claimed to govern the Church, and for a time a succession of anti-popes held court in Avignon, France. Today, Archbishop Salvatore Corleone continues to operate the Archdiocese of San Francisco as if Pope Leo does not exist. He pays no heed to what the Pope teaches. Instead, Salvatore runs his own programs and campaigns that are guaranteed to keep himself within the good graces of MAGA Tim Bush and his notorious Napa Institute. I have begun to read Dilexi Te for my Lectio Divina, which is spiritual reading according to the Benedictine tradition. I plan to read it slowly and prayerfully for as long as it takes me to complete it. I'm sure my own reflections would make for a decent video in the future, but for now, I want to re-emphasize my claim that my own Archbishop is deliberately ignoring all things coming out of the Vatican to keep his MAGA friends, especially the well-off ones, happily within his orbit. Some of my friends on social media have decried their great frustration over Salvatore still heading the local church of San Francisco. I have pointed out that Corleone avoids completely sticking his neck out by directly contradicting Pope Leo's teachings or challenging the legitimacy of his pontificate, as did Bishop Strickland and the now excommunicated Archbishop Mario Vigano regarding the pontificate and teachings of Pope Francis. But that doesn't mean that all is well between the Vatican and the Archdiocese of San Francisco. The Archdiocese has been without an auxiliary bishop since 2019. Most dioceses of all sizes have at least one auxiliary bishop to assist with conferring the sacrament of confirmation, and San Francisco's 90 parishes in 3 counties would certainly justify at least one auxiliary. Happily, retired Auxiliary Bishop William Justice is healthy enough and very willing to assist in this matter. However, Bishop Justice is now 83 and cannot be expected to be around forever, so a younger auxiliary would still be a welcome assist. The last auxiliary was Bishop Robert Christian, a Dominican friar from a prominent San Francisco family. I had heard from a reliable source that his appointment was a compromise, and that Archbishop Corleone had submitted to the Holy See a list of desirable candidates that were all rejected. Bishop Christian passed away in 2019, and no auxiliary bishop has been named to replace him. This, of course, was during the pontificate of Pope Francis. In 2023, Pope Francis appointed then Archbishop Robert Prevost as prefect of the dicastery of bishops before elevating him to the cardinalate. You can bet that Cardinal Prevost was well acquainted with the tense situation between the Vatican and the Archdiocese of San Francisco, and that acquaintance remains fresh to this day. From where I sit, I see the lack of cooperation of Archbishop Cordileone to be much greater under Pope Leo than it ever was under Pope Francis. The sfarchdiocese.org website still displays on its masthead the photo of Pope Leo when he first stepped out on the loggia of St. Peter's Basilica soon after his election. Other than Archbishop Cordileone's pro forma congratulatory statement, there have been no further communications on the Archdiocesan website of anything coming out of the Vatican. The publication of Pope Leo's first apostolic exhortation is being ignored, and the Archbishop of San Francisco continues to manage the sacramental life of the Archdiocese without the assistance of an auxiliary bishop. Back in Trump's first presidential term, I warned that the U.S. Catholic bishops' attempts at cozying up to Trump were going to lead to disaster. I pointed out how Trump's unhealthy relationship with wealthy mega-church leaders who promote the corrupt prosperity gospel nonsense would eventually spell trouble for the Catholic Church in the United States. Protestant hatred of Catholics goes back to the days of the Pilgrims. In the present age, most mainline Protestant denominations have long since adopted a more ecumenical approach in their relationships with Catholic communities. But the age-old prejudice is still hard-baked into these obscenely wealthy MAGA mega churches. Back in the 1980s, the Southern Baptist Convention changed its pro-choice stance to forge alliance with the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops to build powerful support for right-wing extremist political candidates and Supreme Court justices. What began as the moral majority in the 1980s eventually morphed into the Tea Party movement and has lately become Trump's MAGA cult. Over the years, U.S. bishops became toadies for the Republican Party, showing less and less support for Democratic candidates who campaigned for universal health care, food assistance for the poor, and banning assault weapons from human society. Going into the 2024 presidential campaign, the USCCB gave sole priority to the legal protection of the unborn over all other social programs which Republicans were hell-bent on destroying. And here we are today. I have coined the term Calvin Catholic to describe the MAGA Catholicism that has developed in the United States. An elitist exclusionary group that reduces the gospel to an inflexible political ideology of guilt-ridden sexual norms, fear, and hatred of the other. It is pure Calvinist theology with Catholic iconography, incense, rosaries, and a rigid code of 1950s liturgical and social norms. In previous videos, I have spoken of Archbishop Cordileone's gleeful announcement of his membership on the advisory board of Trump's Religious Liberty Commission. I have repeatedly stated how this relationship will be detrimental to relations between the Trump White House and the Catholic Church in the United States. If you haven't seen these videos, please watch them. There has not been any pushback from the Archbishop against Donald Trump over his cruel treatment of migrants, his interruption of USAID, his threats to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. From the moment he stepped out on the loggia of St. Peter's following his election, Pope Leo has spoken of promoting peace throughout the world, the end of the pandemic of weapons, compassion for migrants and refugees, and action to slow the climate crisis. The official website of the Archdiocese of San Francisco remains silent on these issues and instead focuses on those issues and beliefs that comprise the MAGA agenda. On the day after he delivered a stirring homily at St. Peter's Basilica, in which Pope Leo again advocated for the poor and marginalized and preached inclusion of all people within the brace of the Church, an article appeared on the Archdiocesan website that pushed an entirely different narrative. The article reported on the first Bay Area Men's Conference in Spanish, which was held at St. Pius Church in Redwood City on September 13th. The article summarized various speeches that were delivered, closing with one given by Father Jorge Ravazzi, in which he invoked the late Charlie Kirk as a model of male courage and sacrifice. The murder of Charlie Kirk was an evil act. It should not have happened. Nevertheless, nothing Kirk has ever said at his gatherings can be construed as anything other than vile, racist, and fascist. Charlie Kirk once condemned Pope Francis as a Marxist for preaching compassion for migrants. It is unlikely that Kirk was a fan of Pope Leo, who has repeatedly echoed the sentiments of Francis regarding migrants and refugees from day one. Bravery and heroism are attributed to those who stand up to the powerful who abuse the weak. It is not bravery to capitulate with the schoolyard bully and to join in terrorizing those who are already down. Anyone, particularly any priest, who holds a person as Charlie Kirk up as a hero is not preaching the gospel of Jesus. This is heresy. This is blasphemy. That such words appear on the website of the Archdiocese of San Francisco is a disgrace. I'm sure the publication of this article on the day following Pope Leo's homily was deliberate. In the meantime, Archbishop Corleone continues without an auxiliary bishop to aid him in the sacramental ministry of the Archdiocese. The stalemate between the Vatican and the Archdiocese of San Francisco continues. Pope Leo ain't playin', and he ain't blinkin' either. We will have to wait and see how this will all play out. In the meantime, saints preserve us.
Tobarium spagem somnum, per sepulchra regionem cogevo